When God created the world universe, He made the earth a sphere, a ball. I take it that's not a revelation to anybody here. We all know that, right? When man, in his wisdom, wanted to have maps of the world, he had to make them flat. And in order to go from a three-dimensional sphere to a two-dimensional flat piece of paper, there was some distortion that had to come into play. And all maps have some degree of distortion in them as a result of this. Now, if you're looking at maps, you can sort of accept that. But distortion has come into almost everything, including the Bible and the church. When God gave man the 10 Commandments, He gave them primarily as an instruction for relationship between each other and relationship between man and God. One can presume that when this first happened, those who first received the commandments were probably somewhat awestruck and somewhat impressed by this. But as time went on, the onus of salvation, as Pope Francis puts it, gets lost. And when that happens, mankind in his wisdom decides to take in little extras for themselves and that they think should be included. And of course, when that happens, then those who take in those little extras seem to elevate themselves above the others. And you can see this throughout the Jewish history, because as the Jewish religion evolved, those Pharisees and Sadducees became more and more legalistic, more and more incorporated into the law, and less into what the law really meant. When Jesus came along, He was one of the primary lawbreakers of His time. The law, for instance, said in Leviticus that you were to keep lepers separate from everybody else because they would contaminate others. But Jesus went out and healed them where they were. It was said that you should not do anything on the Sabbath because the Sabbath was too holy. But Jesus healed on the Sabbath. It was said in the law of Moses that anyone who was caught in the act of prostitution or adultery should be stoned to death. But Jesus forgave. Yes. He broke the law. He broke the diversions that people had put into the law. The same thing happens today. We have churches who are divided and who are dividing because people develop their own little idiosyncrasies, their own little things that they have to put in to what the law or what the church really should be doing. And scholars are probably one of the prime examples of this, as the Pharisees and as the Sadducees did back in the days of Christ. Scholars today are doing the same thing. There seems to be two reasons or two logics. One is that people put up walls, buildings, fortresses for themselves so that the people who are inside are apparently going to be kept safe from the wolves outside. But the other logic is that we're supposed to go outside and help those who aren't inside the church right now. So, can you picture Jesus going out to see someone or see someone that needs help? Can you picture him sitting down somewhere and pondering a situation or reading about it and thinking about it for 3 or 4 days? Or calling in some consultants to ask about the pros and cons and the cost? He just went out and did it. See, the diversions have crept into the church so that we've taken away from the spirit of the law and are getting back into legalisms with rules and regulations and all the things that divide people. There's only one real episode, one real thing the church has to do, and that is to love God and to love each other. And that's it. No rules, no regulations, nothing else. The people who need their help most are the people that sometimes seem most shunned by the church. The ones who are outside. It's bad enough that they have a problem. It's even worse that the church sometimes makes them feel guilty and embarrassed because of it. We have to get away from the diversions and the changes that take place because of man's wisdom involved in the church. James in chapter 3 calls man's wisdom sensual, earthy, and demonic. But we have to get away from that. Jesus didn't look at the wisdom of man. He didn't go by the rules. He didn't make the diversions. He went straight to where he was needed and where mercy was required. It says in Timothy, 1 Timothy 1, Paul said to Timothy, "As I urged you, that you may charge others that they teach no other doctrine, not give heed to fables and mindless genealogies, which cause disruptive rather than godly edification, which is in faith." The purpose of the commandment is love, from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and from sincere faith. First letter to the Corinthians says that we have to know the things of God, not from the wisdom of man, but from the power of Christ. Yes. We have to avoid and get away from the diversions, the distractions that sometimes divide the church and divide the people in the church. A Catholic Church saint named Ambrose said this: "When it comes to bestowing grace, Christ is present. When it comes to excessively increasing rigorousness or rigor, only the ministers of the church are present. Christ is absent." Let us get away from the diversions and stick to the basic problem of the gospel: loving God, loving each other, and allowing God to spread His mercy. Something to think about.
Thank you very much, Spencer. I appreciate that. That was a good word. Excellent. Love God and love each other. He makes it pretty simple. We come into our time of our offering now, and as we bring forth